What if I told you that one man built a $500 million empire by turning fatherhood into a weapon? That he kissed his son on national television while simultaneously stealing millions from him? That when this same son finally stood up for himself, this so-called father tried to have him murdered on a Georgia highway? This ain't no fairy tale, gang. This is the real story of how Birdman, a bald-headed mogul from New Orleans, perfected the art of psychological warfare in the music industry. We're talking about a dude who literally weaponized the father-son relationship to finesse some of hip-hop's biggest stars out of hundreds of millions of dollars. But here's the crazy part. He's still doing it right now. While you're watching this video, NBA YoungBoy, one of the hottest rappers on the planet, might be walking straight into the same trap that destroyed Lil Wayne's relationship with the man who raised him. The same manipulation tactics, the same psychological games, the same systematic theft. It's all happening again because this industry refuses to learn. Y'all think this is just about business? Nah, fam. This is about a man who turned trauma into profit, who built mansions with stolen dreams, and who's been getting away with it for over 30 years. Every diamond in his grill represents an artist he finessed. Every car in his garage was bought with money that belonged to someone else. So if you want to understand how one of hip-hop's most celebrated moguls is actually one of its most dangerous predators, if you want to see the receipts on how he scammed Lil Wayne out of $51 million and tried to kill him when he fought back, and if you want to know why NBA YoungBoy might be his next victim, then you better stick around until the end of this video, because what I'm about to expose will change how you see the music industry forever. Hit that fucking sub button right now, because we're about to dive deep into the mind of a master manipulator who's been hiding in plain sight. This is how Birdman made millions finessing rappers, and trust me, the truth is way darker than you think. To understand how Birdman became hip-hop's most notorious finesse artist, you need to understand where he came from, because his origin story reads like a blueprint for creating a sociopath. Born Brian Brooks in 1969 in New Orleans, this man literally didn't have a name for the first month of his life. His mother Gladys just called him Baby, a nickname that would stick forever, not just because he kept saying it, but because even today, he still looks like a baby that's been left alone with a Sharpie and a tattoo gun. But Baby's story starts in tragedy that would shape everything he became. When he was just 5 years old, his mother Gladys Brooks died under circumstances that remain murky to this day. Some say it was complications from illness, others whisper she was shot. What we know for certain is that Baby and his siblings became wards of the state because their father, Johnny Williams, hadn't even bothered to sign their birth certificates. Think about that for a second. Your mother dies, you're 5 years old, and suddenly you're property of the state because your father couldn't be bothered with paperwork. They were shipped off to foster care, then to their uncle in freezing Prince George, Canada. Imagine going from the heat of New Orleans to the frozen wasteland of British Columbia as a traumatized 5-year-old. This early abandonment created something broken in Baby that would never heal. The desperate need for family, the fear of abandonment, the understanding that people you love can disappear without warning. These psychological wounds would become the foundation of his entire business model. Every artist he would later manipulate, every father-son relationship he would weaponize, it all traces back to that 5-year-old boy who lost everything and learned that survival meant controlling everyone around you. When Johnny Williams finally fought to get custody of his kids, he brought them back to New Orleans and moved them to Valence Street in the 13th Ward. This was a middle-class black neighborhood with manicured lawns and Catholic schools, a far cry from the projects, but still deep in the heart of a city that was rapidly becoming one of America's murder capitals. Johnny Williams wasn't just Baby's father, he was his first teacher in the art of hustling. This man was a legend in his own right, with over 25 kids scattered across New Orleans and his fingers in every hustle imaginable. He ran restaurants, bars, laundromats, and was deep in the numbers game. Johnny was what they called a neighborhood celebrity. Everyone knew him, especially the ladies, which explains how he ended up with so many kids. But Johnny's real genius was in teaching his sons the fundamentals of business, even if that business wasn't always legal. Baby and his brothers would ride around with Johnny as he checked on his various operations, soaking up knowledge about cash flow, territory control, and most importantly, how to read people and exploit their weaknesses. The real game changer came when Johnny's new girlfriend Patricia moved in with her son Eldritch Wise from the Magnolia Projects. Now the Magnolia was a whole different world from the 13th Ward. This was hardcore project life, where kids grew up fast and violence was just another part of daily existence. Eldritch was already knee-deep in street life at 13, and he became Baby's introduction to a world that would shape everything. The contrast between the two boys was striking. Baby was smart, calculating, and patient. He wanted to understand the game completely before making his move. Eldritch was flashy, aggressive, and impulsive. He wanted the money and respect immediately. Together, they were a dangerous combination. Baby's strategic mind and Eldritch's street credibility. By age 12, Baby was running with the Magnolia crew, but he wasn't just another corner boy. Even as a kid, he had that natural leadership quality that made older guys listen to him. He understood that the game wasn't just about selling drugs. It was about territory, respect, and most importantly, fear. But here's where the story gets really dark, and I mean really dark. According to multiple sources, including his own half-brother Terrence Williams, Baby's initiation into true street credibility involved something that would haunt him and his victims for the rest of his life. In 1986, when Baby was 17, he allegedly forced his 11-year-old half-brother Terrence to commit murder. Terrence himself described the incident years later. He pulls up on you and gives you a gun. So, he hands you a .38 and says someone owes him some money and go handle that. Come on, brought me around the corner, point him out, shoot him. Walk up, shot him to the head, the chest, and in the back because he fell and I ran. This wasn't just about eliminating a problem. This was about creating loyalty through trauma. Baby understood something that most people don't. If you force someone to cross that ultimate line for you when they're young and vulnerable, they'll be psychologically bound to you forever. It's a tactic used by cults, gangs, and abusers throughout history, and Baby perfected it on the streets of New Orleans. Terrence would go on to become one of the most feared hitmen in New Orleans, allegedly responsible for over 20 murders, all in service of his big brother's empire. But the psychological cost was enormous. Terrence was essentially a child soldier, programmed to kill for Baby's benefit. By the late 80s and early 90s, Baby and the Magnolia Boys were allegedly making millions in the trade. New Orleans was averaging 240 murders a year in a city of just 400,000 people. That's a murder rate higher than most war zones. And Baby's crew was reportedly responsible for over 100 murders between 1987 and 1991 in the uptown area alone. But Baby was different from other street hustlers. While they were focused on immediate gratification, the cars, the jewelry, the respect, Baby was thinking long-term. He understood that the game was ultimately a dead end. You either ended up dead or in prison, and Baby had bigger dreams than that. The transition from street hustling to music wasn't accidental, it was strategic. Baby had been watching the emergence of hip-hop culture and understood that it represented something revolutionary, a way to make millions of dollars legally while maintaining street credibility. More importantly, he saw that the music industry was full of young, vulnerable artists who could be manipulated just like the kids he'd been controlling on the streets. In 1991, Baby and his brother, Ronald "Slim" Williams, made a decision that would change hip-hop forever. They took their money, reportedly around $100,000, though some sources suggest it was much more, and started Cash Money Records. The name itself was significant. It was taken from the gang in the movie New Jack City, a film about dealers who used violence and intimidation to build their empire. They literally drew their logo on a napkin, that same logo that's tattooed all over Baby's body today. But this wasn't just some casual business venture. Baby approached the music industry with the same strategic thinking he'd used on the streets. He understood territory, he understood loyalty, and most importantly, he understood fear. Their first artist, Kilo G, was a local rapper who had some buzz in the New Orleans underground scene. But when his debut album, The Sleepwalker, flopped in 1992, Baby learned a crucial lesson. New Orleans didn't want New York-style boom-bap rap. They wanted something that reflected their own culture, their own sound, their own energy. That's when Baby discovered bounce music, that unique New Orleans sound that made people move. It was raw, it was energetic, and it was completely different from anything else in hip-hop. Baby realized that if he could package this sound and take it national, he could build something special. So they pivoted and signed UNLV, a group that would become their first real success. But UNLV wasn't just another rap group. They were the first rappers to actually rap about the street life they were living. While other rappers were fantasizing about crime, UNLV was actually doing it. They were certified killers who happened to rap, and their music reflected that authenticity. Their debut album was a success in the South, but it also established something important: Cash Money's reputation for violence. When you signed with Cash Money, you weren't just joining a record label, you were joining a criminal organization that happened to make music. But here's where Baby's true nature started showing, and it's a pattern that would repeat throughout his entire career. UNLV had a member named Yellow Boy who wasn't afraid to challenge Baby about money. After their successful debut, Yellow Boy started asking the hard questions. Where's our money? When are we getting paid for real? The numbers don't add up. This led to tension that escalated quickly. Baby didn't like being questioned, especially not by someone he saw as beneath him. The situation came to a head during a video shoot in 1996. UNLV was late to the shoot, and instead of confronting the member who was driving, Baby went straight for Yellow Boy, embarrassing him in front of the group. Yellow Boy wasn't having it. He got in Baby's face and said, "You're worried about us being late and you owe us a bunch of money?" Nah, bro. The other group members suggested they settle it with a one-on-one fight, and both men agreed. They met up later that night in front of Yellow Boy's grandmother's house. Baby and Yellow Boy started throwing hands in the middle of the street, but Yellow Boy was getting the better of him. That's when Slim jumped in to help his brother, which led to an all-out brawl between UNLV and Cash Money. Eventually, everyone ran out of steam and went their separate ways. Baby even called the UNLV members afterward and told them to forget about it. Everything was water under the bridge, but as we would learn, nothing was ever water under the bridge with Baby. A few months later, when UNLV's lawyers discovered that Cash Money owed them significant money in unpaid royalties, Yellow Boy was furious. Instead of being mature and just collecting his money, he made the worst decision of his life. He drove to Baby's house and shot it up along with Baby's car. 3 days later, on April 5th, 1997, Yellow Boy was found murdered in his grandmother's house. He had let someone in that he recognized, sat down with them on the couch, and was shot execution style. To this day, no one has been arrested for the murder. Baby would later release a song called "What Happened to That Boy," and many people believe it was about Yellow Boy. Whether or not Baby ordered the hit, the message was clear: don't cross Cash Money or you might not live to regret it. But Yellow Boy wasn't the only early Cash Money artist to end up dead after money disputes. Kilo G, their very first artist, was also murdered in 1998 after he started talking bad about Baby around the streets. The circumstances were eerily similar. Someone he recognized came to his house, he let them in, and he was shot while sitting on his couch. Two of Cash Money's first artists, both dead after questioning the money. This wasn't coincidence. This was Baby establishing a reputation that would follow him for decades. The message was simple: you can get rich with cash money, but if you try to leave or ask too many questions, you might not live to enjoy that money. By the mid-90s, Baby had established Cash Money as a force in the southern rap scene, but he was still looking for that one artist who could take them to the next level. He needed someone with undeniable talent, someone who could appeal to both the streets and the mainstream, someone who could be molded and controlled. In 1993, everything changed when a 10-year-old kid named Dwayne Carter was discovered at a family gathering. The kid could rap better than grown men, with a flow that was mature beyond his years and a charisma that was impossible to ignore. When Cash Money artist Lil Slim heard him, he immediately knew this was something special. But here's where the story gets complicated, because Wayne's family situation was nothing like the broken homes that Baby usually targeted. Wayne had a loving mother, Jacita, and a strong father figure in Rabbit, who had his own record label and his own money. This wasn't some desperate kid from the projects. This was a middle-class kid with options. Jacita wanted nothing to do with Baby. She had gone to school with Baby's brother Slim and knew exactly what they were about. She told Lil Slim, "I am not going to let my son be corrupted by these bad dudes. He's good at home with me and his dad, Rabbit." But Baby was persistent, and he understood something that Jacita didn't. 10-year-old boys are easily impressed by wealth and lifestyle. So he started working on Wayne directly, showing him the cars, the money, the mansion, the studio. Wayne was mesmerized by the lifestyle, and he kept begging to go back. Eventually, 11-year-old Wayne started sneaking around to see Baby behind his mother's back. And once Baby got his hooks in, he used the same psychological tactics he'd perfected on the streets and with his own family members. Now, what I'm about to tell you is disturbing, but it's important to understand how Baby operated and why his control over Wayne was so complete. According to Wayne himself, speaking years later in what he thought was a private moment, Baby allegedly sexually abused him when he was 11 years old. In a video that surfaced years later, Wayne said, "I got raped when I was 11, twist. I ain't never pressed charges. I'ma do you like Baby them did me. I never forget that dick. They was all in the kitchen. I was scared. You don't understand. I was a different man after that. I was Lil Wayne after that." This wasn't just abuse. This was calculated psychological control. Baby understood that by traumatizing Wayne at such a young age, he could create a dependency that would last forever. Wayne would call Baby Daddy, and Baby would call Wayne son, creating this twisted family dynamic that had nothing to do with actual family. Other Cash Money artists have confirmed that Baby never played these games with older artists. Juvenile said, "Baby never played with me like that. I never seen Baby play with Juvenile like that." The pattern was clear. Baby targeted young, vulnerable artists who could be psychologically manipulated. But there was still one obstacle to Baby's complete control over Wayne: Rabbit, Wayne's real father figure who had his own plans for Wayne's career. Rabbit had started Buff Records and was planning to sign Wayne when he got older. He represented independence from Baby's control. That obstacle was removed on July 20th, 1997, when Rabbit was mysteriously murdered at a gas station in New Orleans East. The official story was that it was a robbery gone wrong, but the timing was awfully convenient for Baby. After Rabbit's death, Wayne had no choice but to move in with Baby full-time. Wayne dropped out of school at 14 and became Baby's full-time protege. The psychological control was complete. Wayne was isolated from his family, dependent on Baby for everything, and traumatized in a way that made him desperate for Baby's approval. With Wayne under his complete control, Baby began building what would become one of hip-hop's most successful and exploitative business models. The key was understanding that young artists didn't just want money. They wanted family, they wanted belonging, they wanted someone to believe in them. Baby positioned himself as the father figure to every young artist who came through Cash Money. He would tell them, "I raised you, I made you who you are, you're my son." But unlike a real father, Baby's love was conditional on complete obedience and financial exploitation. By 1998, Baby had assembled the Hot Boys, Wayne, Juvenile, BG, and Turk, and they were dominating the Southern rap scene. Their debut album, Get It How You Live, sold 400,000 copies independently, which was huge for the time. This success caught the attention of Universal Records, and that's when Baby pulled off one of the greatest finesse moves in music industry history. With the help of industry legend Wendy Day, Cash Money negotiated a $30 million deal with Universal that was unprecedented for an independent label. They got to keep 85% of their royalties, 50% of their publishing, and 100% ownership of their masters. This was the kind of deal that major labels usually reserved for established superstars, not some upstart label from New Orleans. But here's where Baby's true genius and his true evil became apparent. This deal should have made everyone rich. The Hot Boys were selling millions of records, Cash Money was getting massive radio play, and the money was flowing in. But somehow, the artists weren't seeing their fair share. Wendy Day, the woman who brokered the deal that made Cash Money millions, had to sue them just to get paid her commission. She said, they paid me before we got to court. They gave me what they owed me, so I was happy. I was sad that it took 3 years and $12,000 when we suing them, but, it finally paid me. They finally did what was right. If Baby wouldn't even pay the person who got him the deal, what do you think he was doing to his artists? The pattern became clear quickly. BG left Cash Money in 2002 over unpaid royalties. Juvenile followed soon after for the same reason. Turk also left over money disputes. These were the artists who built Cash Money's reputation, who sold millions of records, who made Baby rich, and he let them all walk rather than pay them what they were owed. But Wayne was different. Wayne was Baby's golden goose, his psychological prisoner, his surrogate son. Baby made sure Wayne could never leave by creating a web of contracts, dependencies, and emotional manipulation that would take decades to untangle. When Wayne started Young Money as a subsidiary of Cash Money in 2005, Baby promised him 49% ownership and monthly accounting reports. He promised that Wayne would get his cut of everything his artists made. But as we'll see, these were just more lies in Baby's long history of finessing. While Baby was busy finessing his artists behind the scenes, he was also creating one of hip-hop's most iconic and psychologically manipulative personas, Stunna. The red Bugatti, the diamond grills, the mansion, the private jets. Baby understood that image was everything in hip-hop, and he weaponized that understanding to recruit new victims. Baby didn't just wear diamonds, he started the entire diamond grill wave that would define Southern rap for decades. When he said, "I'm the #1 Stunna," it wasn't just a boast, it was a recruitment tool. Young rappers would see Baby's lifestyle and want in, not realizing they were looking at wealth built on their predecessors' stolen money. The psychology was brilliant and evil in equal measure. Baby would use his mansion as a recruitment center, showing young artists the dream life they could have. He'd pull up to high schools in exotic cars, throw money around at local events, and make sure everyone knew that Cash Money was where you went to get rich. But what these young artists didn't see were the contracts that would trap them, or the artists who came before them who were now broke and bitter. They didn't see the psychological manipulation, the financial exploitation, or the violence that maintained Baby's control. Baby's stunting wasn't just about ego, it was about creating desire and dependency. Every diamond in his mouth represented an artist he'd finessed. Every car in his garage was bought with money that should have gone to the people who actually made the music. Every room in his mansion was furnished with stolen dreams. The red Bugatti became particularly iconic, a $2 million car that Baby would drive around New Orleans like a mobile advertisement for the Cash Money lifestyle. Young rappers would see that car and think, "I want that life," not realizing that the car was essentially bought with money stolen from other young rappers who had the same dream. Baby also understood the power of fear in maintaining his image. The diamond grills weren't just jewelry. They were a symbol of his willingness to spend money on permanent modifications to his body. The message was clear. "I'm so rich and so committed to this lifestyle that I'll literally embed diamonds in my teeth." But the most insidious part of the Stunna persona was how it normalized exploitation. Baby would openly brag about his wealth while his artists complained about not getting paid. And somehow this became accepted as just part of the game. He turned financial abuse into a flex, psychological manipulation into entertainment. By the mid-2000s, Wayne had become one of the biggest rappers in the world. The Carter 3 sold over 1 million copies in its first week, won multiple Grammys, and established Wayne as a legitimate superstar. But Wayne's greatest contribution to Baby's wealth wasn't his own music, it was his ability to discover and develop other superstars. In 2009, Wayne discovered a young Canadian rapper named Drake and signed him to Young Money. At the time, Drake was known more for acting on Degrassi than for rapping, but Wayne saw something special in him. Within a few years, Drake would become one of the biggest artists in the world, with multiple #1 albums and billions of streams. Around the same time, Wayne also signed Nicki Minaj to Young Money. Nicki was a unique talent, a female rapper who could switch between hardcore bars and pop sensibilities with ease. She would go on to become one of the most successful female rappers of all time, with multiple platinum albums and chart-topping singles. Here's where the numbers get crazy. Drake has sold over 170 million records worldwide and has had more Billboard Hot 100 entries than any artist in history. Nicki has sold over 100 million records worldwide and has had more Billboard Hot 100 entries than any other female artist. Combined, these two artists have generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. According to Wayne's contracts with Cash Money, he was supposed to get 49% of Young Money's profits, which would include a significant portion of Drake and Nicki's earnings. The 2009 Drake letter agreement specifically stated that profits from Drake's solo career couldn't be used to pay back debts owed by Young Money, meaning Wayne should have been getting a clean cut of one of the biggest careers in music history. But Baby had other plans. Despite contracts that clearly stated Wayne should get his cut of Young Money profits, Baby had been keeping it all. He was moving money around between different Cash Money subsidiaries, claiming excessive marketing costs and basically stealing Wayne's share of two of the biggest careers in music history. Think about this for a second. Wayne discovered Drake and Nicki, signed them to his label, and helped develop their careers. By any reasonable standard, he should have become incredibly wealthy from their success. Instead, Baby was pocketing the money while Wayne struggled to get his own albums released. This wasn't just business, this was theft on a massive scale. We're talking about potentially hundreds of millions of dollars that should have gone to Wayne, but instead went to Baby. It's one of the biggest financial crimes in music history, and it was completely legal because of the way Baby had structured the contracts. By 2014, the relationship between Baby and Wayne had reached a breaking point. Wayne had completed the Carter V, one of his most anticipated albums, and turned it into Cash Money as required by his contract. According to the 2012 agreement, Wayne was supposed to receive $8 million upfront for recording the album and an additional $2 million upon delivery. But Baby refused to pay Wayne and refused to release the album. For 3 years, Baby kept pushing back the release date, giving various excuses but never providing a real explanation for the delay. Wayne was getting desperate. He had fans waiting for the album, he had contractual obligations to fulfill, and he wasn't getting paid for work he'd already completed. The real reason for the delay became clear later. Baby was using the Carter V as leverage to maintain control over Wayne. As long as the album wasn't released, Wayne couldn't fulfill his contractual obligations and move on to another label. It was psychological torture disguised as business strategy. Finally, Wayne went public with his frustration. He tweeted, "I am a prisoner and so is my creativity. I'm truly sorry and I don't blame you if you're fed up waiting for me in this album. But thank you." That tweet was a cry for help from someone who had been psychologically and financially abused for over 2 decades. Wayne was essentially admitting that he was trapped in a situation he couldn't escape, controlled by someone who was supposed to love him like a son. Wayne's lawyers filed a $51 million lawsuit against Cash Money that revealed the full scope of Baby's finessing operation. The lawsuit detailed years of financial abuse, contract violations, and psychological manipulation. Here's what they found. $8 million that Baby owed Wayne for delivering the Carter V, money that was supposed to be paid immediately upon completion of the album. $5 million for Wayne's 49% stake in Young Money that was never properly registered, meaning Wayne had no legal ownership of the label he had built. $13 million in unpaid royalties from Wayne's entire solo career, money that had been hidden through creative accounting and shell companies. $25 million in future damages from Baby's breach of contract, representing the money Wayne would lose if he couldn't release new music or sign with another label. But the most devastating revelation was about Drake and Nicki Minaj. The lawsuit revealed that despite contracts clearly stating Wayne should receive monthly accounting reports and his share of Young Money profits, Baby had been providing no financial information and keeping all the money for himself. Remember, Drake alone has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. Even a small percentage of that would have made Wayne incredibly wealthy. But Baby had been stealing it all, using complex corporate structures and accounting tricks to hide the money from Wayne. The lawsuit also revealed that Baby had been turning down artists that Wayne wanted to sign to Young Money, essentially sabotaging Wayne's ability to build his own roster and generate independent income. Wayne's lawsuit clearly hit a nerve because Baby's response was swift and violent. In February 2015, Wayne was interviewed by Rolling Stone and said that he and Baby were no longer on speaking terms. In April, Wayne got on stage and said, "Cash Money, Carter V coming soon." That public disrespect was apparently the last straw for Baby. On April 24, 2015, Wayne was performing in Atlanta when he got into a confrontation with Young Thug's road manager, Jimmy Pee Wee Roscoe Winfrey. The confrontation was minor. Winfrey got in Wayne's face backstage, security removed him, and he yelled threats as he was being dragged out. But what happened next was anything but minor. After Wayne's show, as his tour bus was driving up I-285 toward a hotel, Winfrey pulled up alongside in a white Camaro and opened fire with a Glock, shooting multiple rounds into the bus. Thankfully, no one was killed, but this was clearly an assassination attempt. The bus was hit multiple times, and if Wayne had been sitting in a different seat, he could have been killed. This wasn't a warning shot or intimidation. This was an attempt to murder one of the biggest rappers in the world. Winfrey was arrested within days, and here's where it gets really crazy. The first person to call him in jail wasn't Young Thug, it was Baby. And the call was recorded by the jail's phone system. Baby told Winfrey, "Come out here and get this money, bro. It's an eye-opener, bro. Strictly business, man." Think about that for a second. The man who raised Wayne like a son, who kissed him on the lips on national TV, who called him his baby, that same man just put money on Wayne's head. This wasn't just business, this was the ultimate betrayal of the father-son relationship that Baby had spent decades cultivating. The recorded phone call was essentially a confession. Baby was telling Winfrey that he would be compensated for the shooting, that it was strictly business. In any rational justice system, this would have been enough to charge Baby with attempted murder or conspiracy. But Winfrey took a 10-year sentence and kept his mouth shut, protecting Baby from prosecution. The message was clear: cross Baby, and you might not live to tell about it. Even if you're his son, even if he loves you, even if you made him millions of dollars, none of that matters when you threaten his control. The attempted murder backfired on Baby in a major way. The hip-hop community was outraged that someone would try to kill Wayne over a business dispute. Other artists started speaking out about Baby's business practices, and the pressure mounted for him to settle with Wayne. The legal pressure was also mounting. Wayne had filed a second lawsuit against Universal Music Group directly, claiming that they were complicit in Baby's theft by allowing Cash Money to withhold Wayne's money. Universal had advanced Cash Money over $100 million, and Wayne was demanding to know where that money had gone. In 2018, after years of legal battles and public pressure, Baby and Wayne finally reached a settlement for an undisclosed amount. Industry insiders suggest the settlement was worth over $10 million, but the exact figure remains confidential due to a non-disclosure agreement. As part of the settlement, Wayne got full ownership of Young Money, meaning he finally had control over his own label and his own artists. The Carter 5 was finally released in September 2018, debuting at #1 on the Billboard 200 and selling over 480,000 copies in its first week. Baby even made a public apology on stage, saying, "I want to apologize to my son worldwide. We had our differences, but at the end of the day, that's my son, and I love him." But the apology rang hollow given everything that had happened. This wasn't just a business dispute. This was decades of psychological abuse, financial theft, and ultimately an attempt on Wayne's life. You don't apologize for trying to kill someone and expect everything to go back to normal. The settlement also came with restrictions that prevented Wayne from talking publicly about the details of his relationship with Baby. So while Wayne got some of his money back and regained control of his label, he was essentially silenced about the abuse he had suffered. You would think that after the Wayne situation, Baby would have learned his lesson and changed his ways. But sociopaths don't change, they just find new victims. In 2022, Baby pulled off perhaps his greatest finesse yet when he acquired NBA YoungBoy for literally nothing. YoungBoy had been signed to Atlantic Records, but the relationship had soured. Despite being one of the most popular rappers in the world, with billions of streams and a massive fan base, YoungBoy was having problems with Atlantic over creative control and money issues. When his contract came up for renewal, YoungBoy refused a $25 million offer from Atlantic. That's when Baby swooped in like a vulture. According to Baby himself, Atlantic executive Mike Kaiser essentially gave YoungBoy to Cash Money for free. Kaiser later explained, "The Inendao was in jail. They don't know what to do with him. He had a rough start. Hey, Stunna gonna rock. He gave blood to me." Sound familiar? Baby once again targeted an artist when they were vulnerable. YoungBoy was on house arrest facing federal charges, dealing with legal problems, and feeling abandoned by his label. Baby positioned himself as the savior, the father figure who would take care of everything. The parallels to the Wayne situation are eerie. Young artist with massive talent? Check. Legal troubles that make them vulnerable? Check. Baby positioning himself as a father figure? Check. Promises of wealth and success? Check. Baby even got a YSL tattoo on his finger, showing his connection to Young Thug's crew and by extension to YoungBoy's world. He was using the same tactics he'd used for decades, inserting himself into the artist's life, creating dependency and building psychological control. Now, Youngboy is one of the biggest rappers in the world. His Make America Slime Again tour is grossing millions of dollars. His albums consistently debut at #1, and he has one of the most dedicated fan bases in hip-hop. But the question remains, how much of that money is Youngboy actually seeing? Given Baby's history, probably not as much as he should. The same man who stole millions from Wayne, who tried to have him killed, who spent decades perfecting the art of artist exploitation, that same man now controls Youngboy's career. Baby's finessing wasn't limited to just music contracts. Over the years, he's built a diverse business empire that includes multiple revenue streams, all funded by money that should have gone to his artists. Bronald Oil and Gas was Baby's attempt to legitimize his wealth by investing in the energy sector. Named after Baby and Slim, the company was supposed to be involved in oil and gas exploration, but its actual operations were always unclear. What was clear was that Baby was using artist money to fund his personal business ventures. Real estate investments became another way for Baby to hide and launder money. His $14 million Palm Island mansion in Miami was purchased at the height of Cash Money's success, but it was later foreclosed when Baby couldn't keep up with the payments. The mansion featured in multiple music videos and became a symbol of hip-hop wealth, but it was essentially bought with stolen money. Various clothing lines and endorsement deals provided additional revenue streams, but again, these were often funded with advances meant for artist development or marketing. The genius of Baby's system was how he used artist money to fund his personal empire while keeping the artist dependent on advances and loans. He would give an artist $1 million advance, then use that artist's future earnings to fund his oil company or real estate investments. The artist would think they were getting rich, but they were actually funding Baby's personal wealth. The universal deal that made Cash Money millions came with a $100 million advance over several years. Where did that money go? Certainly not to the artists who were still complaining about unpaid royalties years later. It went into Baby's personal empire, his lifestyle, and his other business ventures. The human cost of Baby's business model is staggering when you really examine it. Let's look at just some of the casualties of his systematic exploitation. Tyga filed a $10 million lawsuit over unpaid royalties from Rack City, one of the biggest hits of the 2010s. Despite the song's massive success, Tyga claimed he never received proper compensation for his work. Rich Homie Quan and Young Thug were allegedly never properly compensated for Lifestyle, despite it being a massive hit that defined an era of hip-hop. The song was published under the Rich Gang name, which was owned by Baby, meaning the actual artist who performed it didn't have rights to the profits. Terrence Gangster Williams, Baby's own half-brother who spent 23 years in prison, partly for crimes committed in service of Baby's empire, was completely abandoned when he was released. After decades of loyalty, after keeping his mouth shut, after sacrificing his life for Baby's success, Terrence was left with nothing when he got out of prison. The Atlanta street wars that claimed over 50 lives between 2014 and 2016 can be traced back to Baby's manipulation of Young Thug and his crew. When Rich Homie Quan wanted to sign with a different label, the resulting conflict led to multiple murders, including the killing of Big Nut, the label executive who was trying to sign Quan. BG, Juvenile, and Turk, the other members of the Hot Boys who helped build Cash Money's reputation, all left the label over money disputes and never received their fair share of the wealth they helped create. And these are just the ones we know about. How many other artists signed to Cash Money over the years and left broke and bitter? How many careers were stunted because Baby prioritized his own wealth over his artist's success? How many young people were psychologically damaged by Baby's manipulation tactics? The pattern is clear. Baby would find young, vulnerable artists, promise them the world, use their talent to generate millions of dollars, then find ways to keep most of that money for himself. When the artists complained or tried to leave, they would face legal intimidation, financial pressure, and sometimes violence. What makes Baby so effective at finessing artists isn't just greed, it's psychological manipulation perfected over decades of practice. His tactics are sophisticated and devastating, combining elements of cult psychology, abuser dynamics, and business strategy. The father figure complex is Baby's most powerful tool. He specifically targets young artists, often from broken homes or difficult circumstances, and positions himself as the father they never had. This creates emotional dependency that goes far beyond business. When Wayne calls baby daddy, it's not just a nickname. It's a psychological programming that makes Wayne desperate for baby's approval. Trauma bonding is another key tactic. Whether through abuse, violence, or extreme situations, baby creates shared trauma that bonds his victims to him psychologically. The alleged sexual abuse of Wayne, the forced murder by Terrence, the constant threat of violence, these create psychological chains that are stronger than any contract. Lifestyle seduction works by creating desire and dependency. The cars, jewelry, and mansions aren't just status symbols. They're recruitment tools designed to make artists desperate to join baby's world. Young rappers see the lifestyle and think, "I'll do anything to have that," not realizing they're looking at wealth built on other artists' stolen money. Fear and intimidation maintain control through the constant threat of consequences. The mysterious deaths of early Cash Money artists, the attempted murder of Wayne, the street connections, these create an atmosphere where questioning baby becomes literally dangerous. Legal complexity is used to confuse and overwhelm artists. Baby's contracts are deliberately complex, with multiple subsidiaries and shell companies that make it nearly impossible for artists to track where their money is going. By the time they figure out they're being robbed, they're already trapped in legal agreements that are difficult to escape. Isolation cuts artists off from outside advisors who might warn them about the finessing. By becoming the primary relationship in an artist's life, baby ensures that he's the only voice they hear. Wayne dropped out of school at 14 and lived with baby. He had no independent perspective on what a normal business relationship should look like. Financial dependency keeps artists trapped even when they realize they're being exploited. By controlling their income and keeping them dependent on advances, baby ensures that leaving Cash Money would mean financial ruin. Artists become afraid to leave because they don't know how they would survive without baby's support. One of the most disturbing aspects of baby's operation is how the music industry has enabled and protected him for decades. Record labels, lawyers, industry executives, and media outlets all know how baby operates, yet young artists keep signing with him. Universal Music Group has been baby's partner for over 25 years, providing him with hundreds of millions of dollars in advances while knowing about the artist's complaints and lawsuits. They could have terminated their relationship with Cash Money at any time, but the label was too profitable to abandon. Industry lawyers and executives have facilitated baby's contracts and business structures, helping him create the complex web of subsidiaries and shell companies that hide money from artists. These professionals know exactly what they're helping baby accomplish, but they're paid well for their silence and complicity. Music media has largely ignored or downplayed the serious allegations against baby, focusing instead on his success and lifestyle. The attempted murder of Wayne was treated as just another hip-hop beef, rather than the serious crime it was. Other artists and industry figures have remained silent about baby's practices, either out of fear or because they benefit from the system. The hip-hop community's code of silence has protected baby from the kind of scrutiny that would destroy most other executives. This complicity is what allows baby's system to continue. Young artists see him getting honored at award shows, featured in magazines, and celebrated as a successful businessman. They don't see the lawsuits, the complaints, or the broken lives left in his wake. Baby's influence extends far beyond just the artists he's directly exploited. His business model has become a template for how to legally steal from artists while maintaining a facade of success and legitimacy. The normalization of exploitation in hip-hop can be traced directly to baby's success. When one of the most successful executives in the genre is openly finessing artists, it sends a message that this behavior is acceptable and even admirable. The father figure manipulation has been copied by other executives and producers who use emotional manipulation to control young artists. The tactic of positioning yourself as a parental figure to vulnerable young people has become common in the industry. The lifestyle seduction model has influenced how labels recruit artists, using wealth displays and luxury experiences to create desire and dependency rather than focusing on fair business practices. The legal complexity approach has been adopted by other labels who use confusing contracts and corporate structures to hide money from artists. Baby proved that you can steal millions of dollars legally if you're smart about how you structure the theft. The cultural damage goes beyond just business practices. Baby's success has contributed to a culture in hip-hop where exploitation is seen as just part of the game, where young artists are expected to be grateful for any opportunity regardless of how unfair the terms. When you look at the whole picture, Birdman's story isn't really about music. It's about the systematic exploitation of young, vulnerable artists by someone who understood their psychology better than they understood themselves. It's about how trauma, manipulation, and legal complexity can be used to steal dreams and destroy lives while maintaining a facade of success and legitimacy. Baby's estimated $150 million net worth represents one of the most successful finessing operations in entertainment history. Every diamond in his mouth, every car in his garage, every room in his mansion was paid for with money that should have gone to the artists who actually created the culture we love. But the real tragedy isn't just the money, it's the psychological damage. Wayne, despite his success, still bears the scars of his relationship with Baby. The alleged sexual abuse, the psychological manipulation, the attempted murder. These are wounds that money can't heal. Youngboy, despite being one of the biggest rappers alive, is potentially walking into the same trap that destroyed so many before him. The same tactics, the same promises, the same psychological manipulation. It's all happening again because the industry allows it to continue. The human cost of Baby's success is staggering. Terrence Williams spent 23 years in prison for crimes committed in service of Baby's empire, only to be abandoned when he was no longer useful. Yellow Boy and Kilo G were murdered after questioning Baby's business practices. Dozens of other artists have been financially and psychologically damaged by their association with Cash Money. But here's what's really disturbing. The industry celebrates Baby as a success story. He gets honored at award shows featured in business magazines and held up as an example of entrepreneurial success. Young artists see this and think, I want to be like Birdman, not realizing they're looking at a master manipulator who built his fortune on stolen dreams. The question isn't whether Baby is a genius. He clearly is. The question is whether we're going to keep allowing that genius to be used to destroy the lives of young artists who just want to share their talent with the world. Baby perfected something that the music industry has always struggled with: how to legally steal from the people who create the art. He turned finessing into a science, manipulation into an art form, and exploitation into a business model that has been copied throughout the industry. The real victims aren't just the individual artists, it's hip-hop culture itself. When exploitation becomes normalized, when psychological abuse is ignored, when attempted murder is treated as just another beef, the entire culture suffers. So the next time you see Baby stunting on Instagram, remember, every flex represents an artist who got finessed. Every diamond represents a dream that was stolen, and every dollar in his account represents money that should have gone to the people who actually made the music. That's the real story of how Birdman made millions finessing rappers. It's not just about business. It's about the systematic exploitation of hip-hop culture by someone who understood that in the music industry, the house always wins, especially when the house is willing to use psychological manipulation, financial complexity, and the threat of violence to maintain control. The legacy of Birdman isn't just his wealth or his success. It's the blueprint he created for how to legally destroy young artists while being celebrated for it. Until the industry stops rewarding this behavior and starts protecting artists, the cycle will continue, and more young people will fall victim to the same tactics that have been perfecting for over 3 decades. The question now is, who's going to be next? And more importantly, when will we finally say enough is enough?